Today I'm gonna show you my round 1 game from Kadetska Liga. So Kadetska Liga was a tournament team competition if you will, with only 5 rounds, and this was of course classical chess with time limit 90 minutes plus 30 seconds increment from move 1. So now I was facing a lower rated opponent. I was white in this game, Kadetska Liga. So Kadetska Liga is of course a team competition with 5 rounds, and of course time limit is 90 minutes plus 30 seconds from move 1. So this is a classical time control and it is rated for the standard FIDE rating. So I played the move pawn to e4 and my opponent played this move pawn to c6, known as the Karakan. Of course, now I can play pawn to d4, which is the main line and the best move. So I played the move pawn to d4, and after pawn to d5 you can see there are a few variations. You can play knight to c3, which is the main line. You can play pawn to e5, which is the advanced variation. You can take the pawn on d5, which is known as the exchange variation. But I chose to play this aggressive variation, pawn to f3. Of course, this is not the best variation against the Karakan, but it is a bit tricky. And pawn to f3, of course, defending the attacked e4 pawn. And now the main line is to take the e4 pawn, but my opponent chose to play the move pawn to e6, of course still the theory, and after knight to c3, the main line. Now you can see black has only only two good options, either to play knight to f6 or to pin my c3 knight with the move bishop to b4. So my opponent played the move knight to f6, excuse me, and after I played the move pawn to e5, he played the move knight f to d7, of course, and after pawn to f4, he played the only good move in the position, which is to play pawn to c5, of course attacking my center, and after knight to f3, you can see that this is kind of French position. Of course, this bishop on c8 is bad bishop, it is blocked by this e6 pawn, and black played the move pawn to c5, which is the typical pawn break in the French defense. So after knight to f3, knight to c6 is the main line, and after bishop e3, this is still theory, I still know this position. There are few options, either to take this pawn on e4 or to play bishop to e7. But my opponent played the move b6, of course trying to play bishop b7 probably, and still defend this pawn on c5, not only by his pieces but also with his pawn. But this move b6, I have never seen it, so I thought it must be bad, and I just started to develop. I played the move bishop to d3, of course trying not to castle, but to play something like queen to d2 and then castle long, and maybe play g4 and then f5. Of course, bishop d3 is preparing the move pawn to f5, but the computer wanted here after the move pawn to b6 me to play f5 right here, and after f5, then I don't think this is pretty good for him, because I get this bishop to d3, of course, and he no longer has center, and of course this pawn on d5 is hanging and I can take it with my knight. So the move pawn to f5 in this position after the move pawn to b6 was probably the best. You cannot take the pawn because the pawn on d5 would be hanging and this pawn would hang as well in few moves, but I chose to develop. I played the move bishop d3, of course putting this bishop on this, on this long diagonal, pressuring the h7 pawn, and when black will castle, I will have some attack against this weak h7 pawn. So after bishop d3, he chose to take the d4 pawn with the move c takes d4, of course, and after knight takes d4, he traded all the pieces off and played the move bishop to c5. Of course, he was playing for a draw here. Bishop c5 I don't think is like good move, although of course the computer likes it. But after I took the bishop, he took back with the knight, and I played this move knight to b5, of course going for this d6 square and some checks. So my opponent here decided to play knight to b7, which is a mistake. Of course, I now cannot longer play the move knight to d6, but my opponent should just castle here, and after castles I can play the move knight to d6, but of course now this knight can take this d3 bishop, and after the move knight to b5 he played the move knight to b7 as I mentioned, and of course this knight is very badly placed here. It is misplayed actually, and it is very passive, and this bishop cannot longer develop to this diagonal. So I played, after knight to b7, I played the move pawn to c3. Of course, both moves, castles and pawn to c3, are playable, but I still wanted to play something like queen to g4 maybe, and then to castle, or queen to c2 actually. So I played c3 to put my knight back on d4 after the move a6. So my opponent played the move a6. I don't think it was the best move. He probably should have castled, but I played knight to d4, of course, the only move. Of course, knight to d6 would lose a pawn. So after knight to d4, he played the move knight to c5, and the c3 move was played with intention, of course, of defending the d4 pawn, but as well to play the move bishop to c2 and have this bishop on this long diagonal as well. So after bishop c2, here he played this move pawn to g6, with which I cannot understand. Of course, he wanted to prevent the move pawn to f5, but he could just play the move queen to c7, indirectly attacking the pawn, and of course pawn to f5 cannot be played. But after the move g6, I thought I have much better position, and of course it's not winning, it's only +1 by the computer. But now I play this move h4. Of course, after g6, now this is a hook, and after h4, after h4, of course, the idea is to play pawn to h5 and open some files against this king, and my king will castle long. And of course, my opponent was underrated. He had 300 less rating points than me, so I really wanted to win. So h4 is a great move with this scenario being on the board. So after bishop b7, which I think is mistake, he cannot allow me to play h5. So the best move was probably to play h5 himself. But I now played h5, and after he played this very awkward move, king to d7, now I knew I was winning, because of course this king now is in the center of the board on this d file, semi-open d file, and if I can open this d file, then I would be simply winning. Of course, after the move h5, he should probably play something like rook to g8, maybe defending the pawn, but his position is worse here. But of course, king to d7 is not particularly good move as well. So after king to d7, there is one move that is particularly good, and this move is pawn to b4, forcing black to play the move knight to e4. And after I take this knight with my bishop from c2, it takes back, and now you can see that I can make this knight move, and then I would be attacking the king, so the king would be in check. So I play the move knight to f5, attacking the king with check, and after king to c7, now I play this move knight to d6. I put my knight on this d6 square. From the beginning, I wanted to play this move knight to d6 from the move 13, knight to b5. My idea was to play knight to d6, and I played knight to d6 here, and I think I had winning position here. The evaluation is +2.5 for white, so this is pretty much winning. And after queen to e7, defending the f7 pawn, I played the move queen to e2, putting some pressure on black's position, of course attacking the e5 pawn, of course firstly threatening to take the b7 bishop and then to take this pawn. So my opponent played this move pawn to f5. Of course I cannot take this pawn en passant, because this knight would be hanging, so I simply castled, putting my rook on the open d file. And after king to b8, now this is a big mistake, because now I simply take this g6 pawn, and he cannot take back because the rook is undefended. And when king was on c7, of course the rook was defended, and with the move king to b8, he unconnected his rooks, and this move is simply winning. And now he played the move h6, and after I played knight to f7, of course attacking both the rook and the pawn. He played the move rook to f8. I simply played the move king to b2, and after a5, I played this move knight to d6, putting my knight back on d6, maybe as threatening queen to b5 and then take the pawn. So after a takes b4, I play c takes d4, and now he has this idea with the move bishop to d5, and of course he is threatening to take the a2 pawn with check and winning my queen, so I simply play the move pawn to a3, defending my pawn and of course moving it back from the attacked bishop, of course. And now he has this really annoying idea, of course I saw it, but now he can sacrifice the rook. Of course this sacrifice is unsound, but he can try because he has completely losing position. He played the move queen to a7, but probably the best chances he had was to take this a3 pawn with his rook. Of course the idea being I cannot take the rook because after queen to a7, then this would be completely winning for me, and I would simply pick up the queen. So after move a3, of course, if he were to sacrifice the rook, I can take his bishop, and then I can take the rook, and I would be piece up. But of course, after a3, he played the move queen to a7. I play, of course, attacking the a3 pawn, of course, and I play the move queen to e3, defending, the a3 pawn. And after queen to a4, now you can see the mate in 2. I played queen to b6, of course, threatening checkmate, and my opponent here resigned. So I think this game was fairly good for me. I played really good. I played at 90% accuracy, of course, and from the opening, from this move knight to b7, I thought I was slightly better. I thought I had an initiative, of course, h4 h5 being idea after the move pawn to g6, creating a hook, and after h4 and after bishop to b7, I knew I was winning in this position, especially after the move h5 and king to d7. After this sequence of moves, I knew I was winning. Of course, our team won 3-0, and after round 1, we are of course leading the tournament with some other teams as well. So if you like the video, make sure to subscribe to follow more such content, and see you guys in another video.